Welcome back. Thank you for staying with us. Ensuring that there are adequate social safety nets for citizens, in particular vulnerable sections of society, has to be a priority for any government as part of the COVID-19 response and recovery plans. The government of St. Lucia has announced that its economic stabilization and resilience plan will be implemented soon under 3 categories, one of which is strengthening the social protection system. The government's economic recovery and resilience plan includes a number of initiatives that respond to the social dimension of the COVID-19 crisis, especially on the most vulnerable. The Prime Minister noted that the impact of COVID-19 has resulted in many individuals losing their primary source of income or having to subsist on reduced earnings. With this in mind, the government has crafted specific measures in this fiscal year aimed at strengthening the social protection system.
1. A reduction in the electricity fuel surcharge, Mr. Speaker. The fuel surcharge of $1 will be reduced by 50 cents for a 6-month period. This is expected to generate savings which will be used to reduce the electricity bills of qualifying households between $50 and $100 per month. Expansion of the public assistance cash transfer program from 2,600 households to 3,600 households. Increase in the child disability grant from $200 to $300. Increase in the grant for persons living with HIV from $100 to $200.
The grant for children in foster care will also increase from $200 to $300. Prime Minister Shastny says direct assistance will be made to the most vulnerable and opportunities created for short-term employment.
Provision of a COVID-19 hygiene care package for the poor and vulnerable. Microfinance loans to households to diversify into small enterprise and cottage industries. Small infrastructure projects within the rural communities. Mr. Speaker, further details on the administrative arrangements for these measures will be communicated very shortly.
Strengthening social protection systems falls under the recovery strategies of the government's Economic Recovery and Resilience Plan, crafted by the Multi-Sectoral Committee, comprising representatives of the private sector, trade unions, employers, and the opposition with limited participation, given that the representative withdrew after one meeting due to what the opposition felt was a lack of a true spirit of consultation. The government has promised to detail the full economic recovery and resilience plan in the coming days. As the countdown continues to the sitting of CSEC and Common Entrance Examinations, Chief Education Officer Dr. Fiona Meyer is pledging her support for the students who will sit these exams under unconventional circumstances. She says she is confident in the ability of this group of students to excel beyond the adversities presented by the COVID-19 pandemic and has provided some tips for parents to aid with preparations in the coming weeks.
Chief Education Officer Fiona Philip Meyer says in a time that would be stressful to students under regular circumstances, she understands that the COVID-19 pandemic could heighten anxieties heading into the Common Entrance and CSEC examinations. However, she says she is confident that both students and teachers have prepared and will put their best foot forward in the coming weeks.
I know that there is a level of anxiety, as would have been around this time of the year. We should have had Common Entrance on June 10th. This year, it is happening on June 29th. We want to reassure our parents that everything is in place in terms of health and safety protocols, so they need not worry about that. And the fact that our schools have come off in terms of bringing back the students into the physical environment is testimony to that. Again, hats off to our schools, our administrators, our teachers.
Philip Meyer offered some words of advice to parents of primary school students who will sit the Common Entrance examination come June 29th. She urges them to exercise greater patience.
We want to say to our parents, remain calm with them. Affirm them. Reassure them. Speak to their ability, speak to their skill. We do not want Common Entrance to be a threat to them, but more an opportunity for them to really show their potential. And as we continue to say, find time as a family to do a relaxing activity prior to common entrance.
She believes that the adaptations made to the format of the exam, specifically the removal of long answer papers, will offer some reassurance to students. Maya wishes students all the best in their coming exams. Jacka Wooding, Hot 7 News.
With the next general election seemingly on the horizon, citizens are being encouraged to ensure that they are registered to the eligible voters list in their constituency. Our team spoke with the Assistant Chief Elections Officer, who outlined the process by which people can become enrolled voters and how to ensure that they are registered to the correct constituency. Shaka Wooding reports.
Voter registration in St. Lucia is voluntary. Therefore, no sanctions result from non-compliance. Yet, as explained by Assistant Chief Elections Officer Olympia Lionel, this is a critical step if a person intends on casting a ballot at the polls of the next general elections. Lionel describes registration as a simple process, which once completed, permanently places a person on the voters list unless there is a valid reason for cancellation.
Our first and our whole focus at electoral is to ensure that once the person has reached a prescribed age, they come into our offices to be registered. Once you're 18, the requirement to register would be your birth certificate and a letter from NIC. Thereafter, you've been issued with your ID card and you would be on the voters list.
Lionel noted that an individual is only eligible to vote in the constituency where they have declared residence during the registration process. She says if a person changes their residence post-registration, that individual must first declare their new residence with proof of long-term settlement in the new constituency before they are placed on a different voters list.
Once you register that in one constituency, in order to vote in another constituency, you would have to come to electoral to change your address. And to do so, you would have to show proof that you've been living in that address for a period of 2 months. Once you walk into our offices with the proof, our Castries office and our Beaufort office with the proof, and your ID card, your address would be changed.
The voters list is posted twice annually and can be accessed at public facilities in all 17 constituencies. People can also access the list electronically on sluelectoral.com or via the St. Lucia Electoral app, which is available on Google Play Store. Jacka Wooding, Hot 7 News.
The public health, offensive and hazardous trades regulations have stirred much debate and become an issue of contention in society, with many people questioning the timing of such legislation as well as the reasoning behind it. The executive director of the Chamber of Commerce says the legislation is not new, although a few amendments have been made. He says while public health and safety are of grave concern, the government needs to be wary of how fines are imposed so as not to discourage people from taking part in activities that may boost the economy. Genevieve Gonzague reports.
The Public Health, Offensive and Hazardous Trades Regulations number 80 of 2020 continues to cause a stir in society. Under this legislation, there will be taxing and licensing of trades such as charcoal making, jewelry making, poultry rearing, and even photography and painting. The Executive Director of the Chamber of Commerce, Brian Louisi, says the legislation is not new, it has simply been amended and imposed.
Our preliminary research shows that this is really an amendment to some previous legislation that existed and that has not been enforced over time. But I certainly think that the government needs to be very careful in terms of how it imposes fines that do not discourage economic activity. At the same time, I think public health concerns need to be taken on board. The health of the public in terms of slaughtering of animals, certainly I don't think it is a good thing for us to just say it is all right for any and everybody to do.
Louisi says the fact that certain jobs or activities are traditional does not mean that they should not be held to a reasonable and proper standard. However, he says the government needs to ensure there is a proper process for the implementation of legislation of this magnitude, given that it will affect the livelihoods of working class people.
I'm not sure how the government intends to enforce it, but you will certainly admit that a lot of times we have regulations that are not enforced. And so we have to look at that. The other thing is that I must say that the Chamber's approach to it is that we are looking at the legislation and we have invited a couple of members to make comments to show where their concerns are. We certainly do not want regulation that restricts economic activity. We think regulations must encourage behaviors that you want. It must support, but also provide the help so you could meet high-level standards. And I think the fundamental challenge that people will face in this, and we face in that, is that we were not privy to the legislation or the drafting before.
He has indicated that the Chamber understands and supports the imposing of legislation to safeguard health and safety, but he also believes that adequate help must be given to the general public to educate and encourage them to do things the right and lawful way. Reporting for Hot 7 News, I am Genevieve Gonzalez.
You're watching the Hot 7 TV Nightly News. Stay with us because sports and weather are coming up after the break.